All right, welcome back to the hills. It's been a while since I've got on here and done a podcast. We're pretty deep into turkey season now. Going on May the 6th is today's date. So we're getting pretty close to the end here in the Southeast Appalachian area. Some of you guys in the deep south are already done, and then some of you guys up north are just getting started. Where does that leave me? Well, this year's been challenging, and I don't know if it's the reasons that I was originally thinking that it was or not. So, if you don't know, I'm in Western North Carolina. That's where I am. That's where I live. That's where I have spent the majority of the spring. Without giving too much of a spoiler, I did just get back from Kentucky this past weekend, and that's kind of what made me decide to get on here and talk to you today and what it is that I'm seeing. And maybe it'll kind of help you pause and reflect on situations that you could be going through, even if they aren't the exact same as what I'm going through. So again, Western North Carolina is where I'm at. And if you keep up with world events or anything of the nature, last September, Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee and parts of upstate South Carolina, yada, yada. Regardless, Western North Carolina and Eastern Tennessee, more specifically, got hammered by Hurricane Helene. I mean, it was devastation. I could go on, and I could make countless hours of me running my mouth of the things that Helene has done as far as the landscape, and it's honestly, I don't think there are words that can truly describe how incredible, in a negative way, that Helene was when it affected us. And I was able to deer hunt after Helene, so it wasn't like it was the scenery as far as the woods were brand new. I had been out there, in my normal stomping grounds, if you will. I knew what was going on out there in the woods. And although it was different, it was still the woods. I've traveled all over the place hunting deer, turkey, you name it. And I've seen changes before, so I didn't really pause and reflect on what that outlook was going to be. So fast forward to, we'll call it March of this year, maybe even late February of this year, when it came time for me to start scouting here in Western North Carolina. I don't think I put as much effort into it as I should have with the changes that occurred in the area. I would go to my normal spots and I would look for the groups of hens in the normal fields that I would see them in. I'd see them there, see the toms still with them. They hadn't broke off yet. And I'd go, okay, well, things are going to be normal this year. I have nothing to worry about. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to play the game like I always play the game. And everything's going to be hunky-dory. I was wrong on so many levels. And it has really affected the entirety of my season. So youth weekend comes around, and if you've watched that video, everything was going great, and all of my thoughts were getting confirmed in my mind that I don't really need to put any more effort. The birds are doing what the birds always do. I just have to be there at the right time, call the right call, not move, blah blah blah. So youth morning, or the opening of youth here in North Carolina, rolls around. We get down there late. We sleep in a little bit for the kids' sake. We get down there, get set up. I call, and within 30 minutes, we're hiking it back up the hill to clean out Jeremiah's first ever turkey. And I think that created a false sense of hope a false sense of security is probably more the right word. And I also believe that it set this like precedent of, all right, this is how the season is going to play out. Let's start planning for what we're doing after, like what we're doing after we tag out here in North Carolina. And all of these little things started compounding and creating this environment inside of my thinking space that ended up on the back end just absolutely kicking me in the butt. I mean, some silly mistakes were made. I'm not going to go into every little detail that I did wrong throughout the course of the season. I've done a pretty good job documenting it in video. Hopefully you'll scroll back and watch those videos. And more or less, I really don't want to relive it. So what did Helene truly do? If you've spent any amount of time turkey hunting, or if you haven't spent time turkey hunting, you know, or I'm about to teach you, that turkeys are a lot like humans when it comes to the way that they like to travel through their environment. They don't want to deal with blowdown. They don't want to deal with all the damage that was caused after Helene. The unfortunate part of the places that I hunt is it's pretty well unmolested, untouched woodlands. Meaning I don't have, FEMA and the local cleanup crews going in behind Helene and restoring it to what it used to be. However, the neighboring properties that are, adjacent to where I do hunt, they do have that luxury. Whereas, a lot of the neighboring properties are farmlands or even suburban areas where everything's getting cleaned up. And I started noticing, like here, even at the home farm, I couldn't get into the places. I would be hearing turkeys. I mean, let me take a short break and say, Helene did not hurt the turkey population, in my opinion. Now, if you're in the Western North Carolina area and you disagree, please feel free to leave me a comment and tell me what you think. But in my opinion, Helene did not affect the population in terms of numbers. Matter of fact, I have 6 Jakes that walk the back property, the neighboring property, on a pretty regular basis. I see them, I'd say probably 2 or 3 times a week. Okay, so the poult retention was there this year. The population, as far as numbers, is about the same as it normally is, if not better. I'm not a biologist, so I can neither confirm nor deny. But the areas in which these turkeys are traveling has completely changed, in the sense that I was getting beat not by the turkey outmaneuvering me, but by property lines. And I know I'll probably get a comment or hear about it from someone saying, 3 gobbles, it's God country, so on and so forth. That's all fine and well. I'm not going to condone trespassing by any means. But the fact is I was dealing with turkeys being on property that was getting cleaned up after Helene, and not willing to, even if I was doing my absolute best calling and he was fired up and he was wanting to commit, so on and so forth, he would not come to me because he knew what he was getting ready to deal with was a treacherous nightmare that he was not going to be able to navigate without hopping over logs and climbing through blowdown and so on and so forth. Because, and I know that to be true because, take for instance, this one's not on film, so I'll explain this one. I did one of my, I'm not a big fan of evening turkey hunting. I don't like deer hunting a turkey. I don't like playing that game. My whole love for the wild turkey is playing the calling game. That is, what really gets me going. So in the evening times, if I plan on hunting here at the farm, I'll basically drive around all the neighbors' fields so I can get a different vantage point on my farm to see where the birds are coming from, so I know where to go and deer hunt them that evening because I can just about figure out where they're going to be. So I take a ride down the road, head up to my neighbor's house, and I look, and there's a strutter, and I know which way he's going because I've killed a bird in that exact location before on a morning hunt, calling him to me. So fast forward, I get back here to the farm, take off to the back corner where I know he's going to go. The only problem is when I get back there, had not been there, take a moment here, have not been back there since Helene. When I get back there, it, no joke, takes me 15 minutes to travel 80 yards just because I had to get through that much blowdown. And I get back there and I get set up and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what turkey in his right mind is going to come through this? So sure enough, I back out, there was probably still close to an hour of legal shooting light left. I back out. As I'm walking back through my side of the field, I look over into the neighbor's pasture, and sure enough, there he goes. He had walked completely around through the neighbor's yard, basically walked right by the neighbor's house and into the neighbor's pasture. And it kind of humbled me right there because I realized that where I had been hunting was not going to work. So my lack of scouting was really about to kick me in the butt. And if you've been on my channel for any length of time, you know how big I am on scouting. Like that is the number one tool we have as hunters to be successful is scouting. I don't care how good you call. I don't care how, what type of shotgun you have or what your TSS. I don't care about any of that. If you're not where the birds are, you're not going to be successful. If you're not where the deer are, you're not going to be successful. If you're not where whatever animal it is that you're chasing is at that current time, then you're not going to be successful. And the only way to get a general idea of where that is and when that is by scouting. So that made me come off of my private pieces that I had been hunting. And I had to go and basically hunt them on the fly, which is possible. Don't get me twisted. Scouting is our number one tool. But if, people, myself included, I travel out of state all the time and I'm successful on virgin pieces of ground, not virgin as in the sense that no one's ever been on them, but as in they are new to me. And the only bit of information that I have from them is from scouting on my phone on Onyx, e-scouting, looking at maps. That's the only information I have. So I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that A, it's a grind. B, it is much more challenging. And C, it puts you behind the 8 ball when it comes to the other locals in the area who know the lay of the land. So I go and I start hunting public and I start hunting bigger tracts of take for instance my lease, which if you've seen that video, you know how that ended up. And mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake started happening. And I kept wanting to blame Helene and I kept wanting to basically point my finger at the fact that the turkeys weren't doing what the turkeys have always done, which is true. I'm still not discrediting what I said in that sense. Helene has definitely changed a lot of things. But this all brings me to what I really wanted to talk about today. And that's the psychological aspect of hunting. I believe I have become too comfortable with the norm of what Western North Carolina has been since I started this whole thing 20 plus years ago. I basically grew up in these hills chasing critters, and I've become so accustomed to what is considered normal that when a natural disaster came through and reshaped the landscape and reshaped the movement patterns and so on of the animals that I love to pursue, I froze. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. I'm trying my best to be completely open and forward and honest with you guys that I completely and utterly mentally broke down on what to do with these animals this spring. Now, granted, season is not over. I have probably two or three more hunts that I'm going to go on here in North Carolina, and I still have Tennessee ahead of me. But the reality is I missed the good getting while the getting was good because of my mind. You know, if you've watched the videos, you know what happened on my lease where I made a move on a bird who was ready to come into me, but because I was not mentally there, because these turkeys were not doing what they always do, I made a horrible, horrible lapse in judgment and made a rookie move that I would not make in any other state that I go to any other day of the week. And that ended up costing me, I know for a fact that ended up costing me at least 2 turkeys. Now, granted, there were a lot of things that happened that were out of my control. Besides them being on other people's property, I lost permission that I had gained earlier in the year. I still don't know why on that. I almost got shot. All sorts of crazy and wild things did happen. So I'm not going to sit here and beat myself up on it too hard. But I wanted to come to you guys and if you're having a hard spring, let's say you do manage to at least harvest a turkey a year and you're getting late into your season and you haven't harvested one and you keep blaming this matter and this matter and that matter, take a moment and pause and ask yourself, am I beating myself before I even have a chance to let the turkey beat me? Because that's what I just found out while I was in Kentucky, is that I was beating myself because I paused. Now, granted, Kentucky, which you guys will find out here soon, the first video dropped. I will be dropping the second video here soon. Kentucky did kick my butt a little bit to the point where, and this is when I figured it out, to the point where I actually had to just turn the camera off and go back to the basics. Because I was realizing that I was still trying to use Helene as an excuse up in Kentucky that had not been touched by Helene. The area that I was in had a little bit of, or quite a bit of rain. Let me not make that a small deal. But the area that I was in had a lot of rain earlier in the year, but they did not have all the blowdowns and all the obstructions that I was dealing with here in Western North Carolina. Yet I was still trying to use that Helene excuse, subconsciously, mind you, for what was going on the first, we'll call it 36 hours of hunting in Kentucky. And when I took that moment and I paused and I reflected on the fact that, hey, bud, this is not happening here. You're making mistakes because of your psychological, your mental battle that you are having with yourself because you were not able to and or willing to adapt to the changes that needed to be made to be successful back home. So I challenge you, if you are in a situation in your turkey season, or maybe just in your hunting career in general, where you're running into struggles and you think, well, it's got to be this, and it's got to be that, and it's got to be this. I want you to take a moment, and I want you to pause and ask yourself, and I mean, honestly, ask yourself. Don't get this bravado mentality where, no, I'm the great primal hunter, I know what I'm doing, but be honest with yourself and ask yourself, are you beating yourself? Because I was, and I honestly still think that I kind of am. I don't think that I've completely shook it, if I'm being truthful. Because I'm still kind of regretting and beating myself up over the fact that I did not spend more time scouting, even though we had a natural disaster. And maybe your thing is you made a silly mistake that you think is silly, and you're like, well, nobody would have done this. Start asking your buddies, because I guarantee you somebody has made that same mistake. And that is basically what brought it to my attention. I was talking to a gentleman on Instagram, and he was asking me how my turkey season was going. And I was kind of telling him, like, hey, I think Helene's messed me up. I stayed in the house when I should have been scouting. And he said, no, man, like, Helene has definitely messed things up, but the turkeys are still turkeys. At the end of the day, the animal is still the animal. The animal still has to survive, has to eat, has to sleep, has to breed, has to do all of the things that it has to do to be an animal. Nothing more, nothing less. And it made me really stop and go, man, like, I'm overthinking this whole thing. And then I started thinking on, like I said, at the lease, where I was making some foolish mistakes because I was getting worried that my lack of effort before the season was going to cause me to be unsuccessful. So I started doing too much, and I started getting, which I'm always impatient. I'm the kind of guy where if I think a bird's not going to work, I'm going. So impatient might not be the right word, but impatient beyond my norm. I was quick to nope, this ain't happening, and boogie. And there were several times in the past few weeks where, and I have actual physical evidence, not just a feeling, but I have evidence that the turkey was willing to come in there and do the two-step with me. And I just didn't do it. I think that a lot of times, I think this is where I start getting superstitious and take all of what I'm about to say right here with a grain of salt. But I think hunting in general is a lot like the game of baseball, where there's hot and cold streaks. And I think there's a study, don't quote me on it, but I think there's a study that went into the psychological effects of those hot and cold, or not effects, but causes of those hot and cold streaks, how it's more mental than it is anything, out of this worldly. But we get in our own way and we trip ourselves up and we get in our minds and we start creating this ripple effect, this chain effect, if you will, of maybe it's poor choices or poor attitude. I know that was my problem for a lot of it. I was having a really piss poor attitude. And I'll get into that a little bit more in the Kentucky Part 2 video. But the study basically goes on to say, like, it takes something, whatever that something is, to get you back on a correct psychological and mental path that leads you into that quote unquote hot streak, right? That when that batter's hot, or when you're hot in the woods and it seems like everything's going right. There are so many books written and so much literature and so many people like me on the internet who go on and just run our mouths. And I think sometimes we bury ourselves when we get in these funks. We bury ourselves in this information and we kind of overwhelm ourselves, because let's be honest, like, we can only really do one thing at a time as far as something new. And I think a lot of times we just have to stop and be like, yo, man, like, I've done this before. I know what I'm doing. Am I getting in my own way right now because of whatever circumstance it is? So let's say you're not dealing with Helene, you're not dealing with a natural disaster, but you're going through this funk because you bumped a bird off the roost and that really bothered you because that was the first time you've ever done it. So now everything seems to be going wrong. You're calling a bird and you miss a call and it spooks them, or you show up and you turn a corner and birds are standing in a field edge and you bump them, and blah, 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 right? All these scenarios that keep happening after the original mistake. And you start thinking, like, have I lost my touch? And the reality is like, no, you're probably trying to overcompensate or overreacting from the first mistake, and it's weighing you down mentally. And I say all this to say, I have no idea what the cure is. I don't know how to prevent it. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to turn it around once you get into that mindset. But I think the first thing we have to do is realize that we're in there. We have to realize that is the situation that we are in this current moment. Like, hey, I am not myself right now. The bird's still doing what the bird does. The deer is still doing what the deer does. The bear, the elk, the moo, whatever is still doing whatever the animal does. The animal is not thinking on a conscious level like we are. Right? So the problem is me. Pause. I'm going to leave you with this, and I really hope it helps somebody out there. This is my absolute passion in life. I love deer hunting. I love fly fishing. I love bear hunting. I love, all of these different aspects of the outdoors. But the wild turkey has always held a very, very special place in my heart. Spring, turkey season, more specifically. And I think the biggest downfall, but also one of the best blessings because I have found my calling in life, is how seriously I take this chase. I get so wrapped up in it and so deep in the trenches that I don't take time to pause and enjoy it for what it is. And I think I get lost in the mistakes. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm bloodthirsty, but when you've been doing this for as long as I have, you kind of expect some success eventually. And by success, I mean harvesting a turkey, when in reality, success is so much different than that. Success is not pulling the trigger. Success is listening to the woods wake up on a spring morning, hearing that gobbler on the limb, making those frantic decisions, talking to your buddies when it doesn't work out, going after it again the next day, listening to your buddies say, hey man, you'll get them next time, and letting the circle of life continue. I think I forgot that this year. And I think that hurt me worse than any natural disaster or mental breakdown that I could ever have. For a split second, I got lost in the harvest and forgot what the chase was all about. And if you're going down that road, I plead and beg with you to pause, even if you have to take the rest of the season off. Just pause. Stop. Don't lose sight of what this is all about. Because at the end of the day, the only person who cares if you tag out or not is you. Truth be told, all those likes on Facebook and Instagram, they're going to forget about it in a week or two. The only person who cares is you. So make sure you're enjoying what's really important out there. And if you are in a place right now where you can't, take a break. I hope you got something good out of this podcast today. I know it was what it is always, and that's just me running my mouth. I promise you, I do have plans after turkey season to bring some guys on here. Obviously, we're all busy right now in the spring turkey woods. That's why I haven't even been on here myself. I've been out there trying to chase turkeys, but I had a day off, so I wanted to come in here and give you guys a little bit of feedback on where I am in my turkey season. I hope you guys are having a safe turkey season. Let me know how everybody's doing down below. Let me know if you've been successful, if you're getting hung up, whatever the case may be. Hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. If you haven't already, I would ask that you subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, keeps things moving. Also gives me a bit of encouragement on those bad days where everything kind of seems pointless when it comes to the good old YouTube. But other than that, until next time, I'll see you on the hill.